Hi, everyone. Sorry for short delay. We just wanted to make sure everything is set up properly. So I hope you excuse us this 5 minute delay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it is a very, very difficult, not only room, but also the building is very difficult to find, especially for VU students. It's my fourth year here, and I've been here. This is my second time in this building. So as a fun fact, I can say that when I walked in, the lady at the reception desk very politely asked me where she can find one of the rooms in this building. So I think everyone is a bit confused about transitorium, but nonetheless, you made your way here. Thank you so much. So today, we are gonna have a panel discussion about the Syria 1 year after the fall of the Assad regime. The event is organized by the political science community at the VU, by the student community coordinator team, and by the Foundation Max van der Stoel. I'm sorry if I butchered the Dutch name. I'm not the speaker yet. I just wanted to let you know as well that the session is recorded and it will be posted on YouTube and social media of the FMS. So if you let me, I will greet our amazing panelists. Thank you so much for joining us. And going from your left side, I want to welcome Linda Osman, international lawyer, human rights activist, legal expert for Syrians for Truth and Justice, trial monitor at the Nuhanovitz Foundation, which I had the pleasure to cooperate in the past, and program manager at Adalty Center. Thank you so much for being here. Zozan Alloush, senior advisor in the Dialogue Platform and the Humanitarian and Development Cooperation in Syria, a member of the Women's Advisory Board in the Office of the UN Special Envoy for Syria and the Euro-Mediterranean Women Mediators Network. That is a super long name of an organization. Yes, you're not making it easy for me. And last but not least, Professor Ali Hamdan from UvA, Professor of Political Science. So we're in our territory. With focus on civil war and political violence. So exactly the topic of our speech today, international relations, exile and transnational politics, currently working on the Syrian opposition. Thank you so much for joining us today. The panel discussion and the whole event will take the form like this. We will start by asking a few questions that we have prepared. We want it to be a bit flexible, so when we come on a topic that is particularly interesting, maybe I will get a bit more into that. And then at the end, we will have a bit of a Q&A session so that you can ask the question that really interests you as well. So thank you so much, and let's get to it. The questions I will be asking today are not specifically directed to one person. So if you feel that you are the person to answer, then please let me know. And the first question is a bit of an introduction, but I guess a pretty long one. So almost exactly 1 year ago, on December 8th, 2024, the Assad regime in Syria fell. What brought it to its knees was a coalition of diverse military groups, with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, led by Ahmed Hussein al-Shara, or his nom de guerre, Abu Muhammad al-Julani. But what followed was the adoption of the interim constitution, the creation of the transitional government, and partial elections to the parliament. This transition and gradual transformation is taking place in a very, very difficult and complex context. While the victorious forces were the primary forces, they are not the only military group that is left and not the only military group that still operates. The government still is not fully in control of the entire territory of the country, and faces also external pressure from other countries in the region. So with this quite hostile environment, what specific changes has the new government managed to introduce already to the governance and to the Syrian state institutions? I know it is a very long question and a very broad one.
So first of all, thank you very much for having me, and big thanks to Zaradash and to organizing all this stuff. I came all the way from Brussels to be here, and believe me, it's not easy to talk in front of EU university members and students. So I just came from Syria just last week, and I work inside Syria in Damascus. In a platform that we give some support, technical support to the dialogue between Northeast Syria and the Syrian new government. And also we work in Sweda and in the coast and in Aleppo. So we were the first organizations that we begin working in Syria after 8 days of the collapse of the let's say revolution or the change of the regime. I don't know how we name it anyway. I think there are two stuff that we can talk in positive way before we go to the negative way stuff in Syria. First of all, that now we have some space to talk. The Assad era and time, it's done. We don't have Bashar al-Assad anymore in Syria. No one, as the Syrian people, believed any day or one day that we will wake up one day and see Syria without al-Assad. Second day that I think we have some space to discuss about the future of Syria, how we can manage our diversity, our difference of backgrounds in terms of minority, economy, rights, women rights, youth rights, all this stuff. So I think one positive stuff that now we can talk about this stuff, we can discuss about this stuff, and we have some support from the international community to just, push on this stuff in Syria. And I think the second stuff is the new government, however they're trying to control everything, they are forced to not be alone, the one-man show in Syria. So from my perspective, after visiting Syria all this time, coming just last week, every time I go to Syria, I see new stuff happening in Syria. It's not because the new government like to do it, it's because they are obligated to do it. So at least they have the ear to listen, to hear, and to do some change in Syria that opens a space for us to work and do stuff.
Thank you. So, okay, yes, sorry.
Yeah, just to echo what Zozan has just said. Yeah, a lot of the Syrians I've spoken with, a lot of friends of mine, just sort of anecdotally have made this point that it is a night and day difference in atmosphere in terms of one's ability to speak freely, with some limitations, but for the most part, that there is an immense kind of personal feeling that one can express oneself in this post-Assad era. So that is something I've heard from a lot of people, and it really tells you, I think, just how bad it must have been before for them, that keeps coming up as often as it does. I think another probably kind of change that you could observe is that, and that we can expect. I think the answer that you're looking for is something about how they've changed the institutions of the state, right? And that's, I think, remains to be seen, how state institutions will change dramatically. I think we're all still sort of keeping a very close eye on how they come into being, but I think the more immediate noticeable change is that before, under the Assad regime, there were these very complex networks of patronage that shaped politics, right? Where particular figures had their sort of people who were part of their network, right? And this was sort of some of the way that politics were simply done. And those haven't completely disappeared, but their role has completely changed in a post-Assad Syria, right? A totally different set of actors is in charge of the state, or is trying to be. in Damascus. And that means that the old networks will have to adapt to that reality in some way or another, right? And again, it's still, a year is not very long, so we still have a lot to wait and see how that will play out. But I think that's one of the quieter changes that we haven't really, I think that we can talk more about the elections, but I think I've heard a lot more discussion of the elections than I have of this. And I think this is more important actually than the elections in some ways, although I could explain what I mean by that later.
Thank you. If I can add on to that, you mentioned different groups that were part, and the first government after the fall of the regime was comprised almost solely by HTS members, but then the new government is more diverse. Then the election also elected a more diverse group with some regions, of course, still waiting for the representations. But maybe I wanted to ask about these groups that took over and that participated in the revolution. So the end, of course, the whole web of alliances and opponents in the Syrian civil war was particularly complex and difficult to understand. At the end of the war, however, most of them were close or further allies. After the fall of the regime, how does the relations between these groups look? Did they come under one military command? Are they still operating on their own? What is the control of the government? Now more and more legitimate government with all the reforms and the popular support on the situation. Are they controlled by the government, or how does these groups operate now?
I want to make you say anything.
I mean, if you give me this, I will not give it back, yani. Okay, I mean, look, if we want to just talk about the details, how the Syria is managed inside Syria, I mean, it's very catastrophic. But I'm trying to be positive. Yani, it have been only 1 year, so it's long way. It's long way to manage to have some stability in Syria. A nice governance system, a nice government. Anyway, so we have time. We should have time based on the different experience. Other countries, I mean, this stuff needs time. But if you go to Aleppo, you will see that it's controlled totally by Turkey and Turkey's affiliated group, totally. In terms of governance, municipalities, security, checkpoints, every single details, it's managed by the Turkey and their affiliated groups. If you go to the coast, you will see more foreigners are controlling there. The French one, the Ogor one, and then somehow from Amshad and others controlling the checkpoints and others. And specifically very radical Salafi, because we have the Alawite there and others. And if you go, for example, to the Sweda, in the way going to Sweda, you will see more Jaish al-Islam controlling there. So they are still not integrated, and no one is talking about the Jaish al-Islam. Everyone is only talking about the STF integrations, but no one is talking and speaking about the other groups' integrations. Yani. If you go to Aleppo, I mean, to go to Damascus, it's a bubble of Damascus. Yani, it's nice. You can go out, you can drink. Now we can see less foreigners inside Damascus. You can see more clean area, but it's controlled by the Shara and his people. Yani, very close people. You can see it. If you go to the Maliki, our colleague in Syria knows the neighborhood of Maliki, the neighborhood of Mazze, you will see the heads, the people who are really controlling this area. So now we cannot say that one group is controlling Syria, it's different. So they have the background of Al-Ghazwa, that it's an Islamic perspective, and that all these stuff are something given because you have Ghazwa and Ghazut and you are controlling something. But in general, everyone is trying to give some good imagine in Syria because they need it, and we know that we need programs like DDR, we need programs like, I mean, the integrations, it's not an easy word, it's a process, you know. So then you go to Northeast, when you go to Northeast from Der Hafel, for example, that the Turkish controlled groups, they are closed now. Der Hafel, between Der Hafel and Northeast is closed. Not because the government wants to close it, it's because affiliated group to Turkey closed that border. And if you go from the way of from Tadmor way from the Deir ez-Zor, you will see that the road it's open because it's managed by the government and the defense ministry. So it's different mechanism every single. If you go to Idlib, it's like you are traveling from Syria to a new country. Totally new country. We do still have the Turkish currency. We do still have the Turkish schools, language, and the system. It's totally different in Idlib in terms of governance and security. So it's a different mechanism. A lot of details can be shared, but in general.
All right. What you presented was a very, very diverse image of the current Syria, and very well, problematic to govern, definitely. Another huge problem of governance is that with the fall of the Assad regime, basically every level of governance had to be completely restructured. The regime was committing horrific acts of terror, of torture against its population. And one of the biggest challenges now is how to address these war crimes, human rights violations, without at the same time destabilizing the country, as I imagine, the civil administration, especially of such complex, such divided territory, is something that is a new challenge for the groups that took power. So, legal question, finally. How should the new government and Syria and Syrian people in general address these issues? How to deal with and bring to justice the perpetrators of the crimes? Should it happen at the level of the country? Should international courts step in? How would you see that, if I may ask a bit direct the question this time?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. And I didn't want to step into politics because as a lawyer, I have learned not to step into politics and stay with the legal framework. To be honest, we don't know the concrete answer to that. But like according to my work, we see that there is multiple steps we have to have a look at. First of all, we have to look at the constitutional framework that has been issued in March 2025. If we look at it, there is like a huge power has been given to the interim president. Like in Article 47, it's allowed the president to appoint entire constitutional court, which should be a democratic constitutional court. In Syria now, it's not the case. Article 50 gives the interim president exclusive control over the amendment of the declaration, which means any amendment is going to be in head of the interim president, which is not the ideal way in order to go into prosecution any violations that's happened in Syria. And to add to that, we have now a new national commission, which is really important to look at it because it sets a scene for the accountability in Syria now. The National Transnational Justice Commission and the National Commission for Missing Person. The National Commission for Missing Person is the one it's going to look and investigate into all the disappeared person that has been in Syria, whether that has been happened from Assad regime, ISIS, any other militia. However, if we look at the National Transnational Justice Commission, it's gonna look only at the crimes that has committed by the Assad regime, which is a huge differentiating between the victims. That means if someone has been disappeared by ISIS, for example, the National Commission for Missing Person, it's gonna look into his case, but he's not allowed to reparation, to prosecution, to fill a case, which is differentiate between victims and actually affecting people on the ground. Because those who has lost their loved ones through ISIS, for example, they're gonna feel like I don't have the same right as someone who has like missed their loved ones through Assad regime. Which also does not contribute into the accountability that we aim in Syria. And to add to that, sorry, it's too legal, but it's necessary for setting the scene. In Syria, we don't have any definition for war crime, crime against humanity, or genocide, which means if we're gonna start now any kind of prosecution, people are not gonna prosecuted in according to the huge crime that have committed. And according to that also, to add to it, we don't have any courts that is specialized in international criminal law, and judges does not have been trained on that. And judges in Syria, to be honest, they don't know how to do legal work because it has been corrupted for the past, not 14 years, for the past 16 years during Assad father and son. However, also, if we look at the bright side, we have started the coastal trial for the actions that has happened in Latakia. But if we look at them, there have been a national commission for inquiry for the actions that has happened, for the violence that happened in Latakia. And this commission has done its work in according to, let's say, international standard. But this commission is only administrative, so it cannot really make a prosecution or legal file. But even with that, we have started the trial last week. And we have worked on the national law that I just say they don't have any definition for war crime, crime against humanity, or crime of aggression that happened in Syria. And they use the national law that is not functioning right now in Syria. So we can see that this kind of like judicial action is actually political until now. And it's understandable that there is a huge pressure on the government. They should start something legal, but it's not the right way, to be honest. What we hope to see is that we have to have a hyper court which have Syrian, international, Arab judges, and we have to see a National Truth Commission, which actually working into all the victim, not just excluding one or another. There has to be a real vetting for all the judges that have been working in Syria. There is some judges that has been, terminated, but we need more of that. We need a plan. Syria right now really need a plan for transnational justice and criminal accountability. There have to be like a roadmap in order to be transparent, in order to know what they are doing. Like, for example, the trial that happened for the coastal action, it was as a sudden, like I'm a lawyer, I'm working in Syria and I'm working here, but I didn't know until the day of the trial. I assume even the judge doesn't know even like 2 or 3 days before. They announced it like less than 24 hours on the national news that they're gonna start this trial the next day. So to be honest, right now, like, the road for justice in Syria, it's not ideal. I would say we are all at the baby steps for that. And I understand that people want justice because like justice denial is justice delay is justice denial, but also justice rush is justice burned. And I don't see in Syria now we are going into the right direction. Otherwise, we're gonna move into the new circle of violence if we didn't go into the right direction, unfortunately. And sorry, I take too much time.
No, I mean, I don't know what to do with this. I mean, so we can get this very, very helpful legal perspective. I just want to kind of elaborate a little bit on some of the, I mean, as a lawyer, politics is, it's this thing that we want to keep over there. But yeah, but I guess I'm here because of the politics. And so, like, just to kind of add some aspects to this, at least the way that I see some of what's going on right now is that calls for accountability, transitional justice, for them to be really, I'm not an expert in these fields, in this particular field, because I'm not a lawyer. But for them to be really just in a sense that I think most of us would recognize, they ideally punish perpetrators, not communities. And what is sort of difficult in this moment is that the way I at least read some of the reforms that are going on, for instance, in the Constitution, the new Constitution, I see sort of two competing messages being given to the public in Syria by this new government. Right. On the one hand, the government is sort of saying in the new constitution that, yeah, all Syrians are equal. We all have the same, we're all equal before the law. We're going to respect the cultural traditions, religious traditions of all these different communities, which is great. At the same time, the Constitution says we're going to continue to distinguish between different communities on the basis of using kind of religious boundaries to distinguish the civil status of different communities, which effectively reintroduces these communal boundaries and turns them into meaningful parts of politics again. And one reason that they do this is because it makes it easy for the government to present itself as kind of working with the community when what they're mostly doing is working with the elders or elites of those communities, right? And that's why we see all these photos of Ahmed al-Shara smiling with all of these older religious or tribal figures, right? To kind of show, yes, we are consulting these communities, right? But what this sort of does still at the same time is reinforce the idea that Syria is a country of communities, not individuals, right? And it's individuals who commit crimes, right? And it is on this basis that ideally transitional justice can be carried out. But in this moment where there is still this sort of confusion whether the government is trying to focus more on individual or is reintroducing communal distinctions, it is unsurprising that for some people in Syria right now, their response is to lay blame at communities' feet, not at individuals, right? And this is one of the challenges that I think the current government is sort of wrestling with, is how to, I think it doesn't know, I can't speak to it. We're still kind of learning what their motivations are. But we're sort of watching them kind of work out how they want to present the role of communal divisions in the country in the post-Assad era and what that means for who's responsible for what. As Linda just said, people who are victims of anti-Assad movements or ISIS, for example, they're not entitled to the same kind of justice, right? Did they not suffer the same kind of crimes, right? These are some of the consequences of thinking in these terms, I think. So that's just to think a little bit about the communal politics surrounding about this, but you guys can feel free to push back against me.
Yes, the cable also is very problematic today. Yes, exactly. And this is another question that I wanted to ask. So these divisions in Syria are along ethnic, religious lines. They have been very, very clear, and they are still very, very clearly, there are divisions. Now, on one hand, the government is comprised of diverse group of individuals. On the other hand, there is still ongoing campaign against Druze individuals. There are massacres happening in Latakia against the Alawite community. The Kurdish forces in the northeast still remain in conflict with the government. So, especially having in mind this question that the victims of the anti-Assad forces are not entitled to compensation, they're not treated equally to the victims of the Assad regime. I wanted to ask, how safe is current Syria for the minorities, both legally, politically, socially?
As someone traveled to Syria, I will try to be very politic and diplomatic. Actually, we have to think which concept and which concept. For example, now we think, we talk about the minority in Syria. Everyone speaks about the Kurds, for example. An example. The Kurds are Sunni. We are not minority in the concept of the new regime. But how the Alawi are feeling, the Druze are feeling. I think now it's not about only being minority or not minority. It's how you are dealing with the new government. I mean, yes, we have now a concept of Sunni in Syria, the victory of Sunni, Bani Umayyah, all this stuff. It's only media. When you go to the ground, many of the Sunni are not with this government. They are not feeling safe with this government. You can't travel to Damascus and see. Damascus people are Sunni, but how much they are feeling safe? And I just want to be clear, it's not because the concept of the new government, it's because in Syria, we don't want to admit that we have the problem of accepting each other. This is historically, this is not something new. I mean, yes, I mean, in media, we say we love each other. I mean, we didn't have the difference between Kurds and no, we had. I mean, Kurdish people never wanted to be married to Arab people. This is our reality. I mean, Shia doesn't like Sunnah. Sunnah doesn't like Druze. I mean, let's accept and admit that we have this reality, and then we find solution for our reality. But as far as we are trying to say, no, we were in a very la-la land. No, we weren't. We weren't good. I mean, Kurdish people, 1 million, about 1 million of the Kurds, they didn't have the nationality in Syria. I mean, no Arabs talks about that. Why? Because they don't like Kurds. I mean, then now we are talking about, no, this is a reality in Syria. We are not able and capable of manage our difference in Syria. That's why we are now in the situation how the Syria is now. Yeah, okay, one of them. We have my colleague. He never had the nationality of Syria. So just, I mean, every time I talk about that, I want to be realistic because look in Europe, for example, after many years of the conflicts, they agree that they have interests together. So then I admit to find solutions. So in Syria, it's not only about minority, it's because we don't accept each other. Second, the problem in Syria was because we had a political problem. I mean, the concept of being one-man show in Syria, it's not accepted anymore. I mean, if we don't have a real power sharing in Syria, and I mean it when I say power sharing. Now in Syria, when we talk about power sharing, we need Northeast people, the real one, the one who are controlling the arms, not a Kurd from Syria. They cannot bring Kurdish people from US and say, look, we are diverse. No, it's not like this. In Syria, we have different power. So this power should be integrated to the government. Then we will have some stability in Syria. As far as we are not accepting these people in the government, everyone will play in their own way, you know. Third stuff I just want to just highlight. When it comes to the Kurds, we have an agreement, SDF and the new government, they had an agreement in 10 of March. And we are still committed to that agreement. Our leaders, General Mazloum and the self-administration, SDF, they did every single detail was asked by the internationals. Every single detail. So they asked about data, SDF data. They said we are ready to give data. They gave the data. They said we want the share of the resources. They already have the share of resources. They wanted to have like an administrative integration. Self-administration said we are ready to do it. So in terms of the technical stuff, Northeast did every single detail was asked by the American, by the UK, and by the new government. But the other part is not responding because basically they don't have the tools and the infrastructure and the mentality to accept each other and other people. So they think that, okay, now they have the control of Syria, of Damascus, so they're controlling every single stuff in Syria. My word to our colleagues in the new government, because we have nice connection with them, relation, they are our people, they are Syrians. You have to be convinced that you are leading Syria, you are not owning Syria. The term of owning Syria is done with Bashar al-Assad, 50 years. Now we have our way. We know how to make new revolutions. We know where to go in Europe. We know where to go in UK. We know 10 years we have been very good, learned and prepared to say no to every single government trying to own Syria. So minority, when I go to Damascus, I feel safe. I travel safe because I managed to have some relations. Our people, other people are not like this.
I don't want to.
Can add at the end as we go.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, yeah, how safe are minorities? I mean, we could be here, I think, for 2 weeks talking about this realistically. But I think what I would say is I would add maybe two perspectives to this question. One is that I think most people can agree that the new government in Damascus has been not as bad as many people worried. And I do not say that lightly. I do not say that to forgive them of the many sources of critique. Sorry, the many things they have done that deserve critique. However, I think the new government has displayed a certain calculus that is willing to work with minority communities, right? So they have shown that they want to reach out to them, they want to include them in the country. They have, I think, their own interests in how and why they do that. I can elaborate on that if anyone's interested. But it's in some ways been better than expected, right? So my main kind of observation about that is mostly that the way they've been doing it is primarily through forging ties with the elites of these communities rather than with the sort of ordinary people, right? So if you are attempting to incorporate people from a disadvantaged community and you're only speaking to, I don't know, their religious leadership, this sort of perpetuates the idea that that the community is a coherent whole, that the community is one actor, and that all of them are implicated in the same set of politics, right? Which we know is not true, not always. But then the second thing I just wanted to say in response to this point is that yes, it has in some senses been better for minorities post Assad than people expected. That doesn't mean it has been great. But what is at risk for a lot of these communities, I think, is that for many of these communities, the answer to feeling repression at home has been to seek support from abroad. And what I think all of us in this room paying attention to the news are aware of is how world politics is altering. And that right now, for a lot of these communities, relying on support from, say, the EU, for example, countries in the EU, their interests are really changing right now, and not in a way that is really helpful for these communities. And so the Netherlands, Germany, all of these countries, in my analysis, these are very fickle allies at the moment. They are not reliable allies to keep these communities safe the way that they deserve to be. And so when communities in Syria, like in many countries in the Middle East, seek support from outside, this is something we all have to kind of contend with, I think, that support is increasingly, the basis for that support is changing, right? And that will change what kind of political realities these communities face. So for example, now that the US is closing all these deals with the new government, is making moves to remove sanctions and so on, normalizing ties, and that the EU is following suit, it's harder for me to trust that these guys will be good actors protecting minority communities in the country. And so this is, whether we like it or not, I think this will be part of the politics of keeping those communities safe, is acknowledging that the outside world is not going to be very reliable in that sense. At least that's how I see it. Maybe you guys see it differently, but I'd be curious.
Well, if I want to put the conversation that you posed has contributed in a legal firm, I would say, like, first of all, we have to look at the word safety in human rights, which is protection from violence, fair political representation, respect for culture and linguistic identity, and law that protect people from discrimination. And as Suzanne said, and Ali, we don't see that neither for Druze, neither for Alawites, not for Kurds, and we didn't touch base actually on women, but also for women, there is no clear representation in Syria. In Syria, at the moment, we only have one ministry of women ministry in Kabawat, and there were some political appointments, like the head of Women Affairs Office and the head of Central Bank for a really short period of time. And in if we look at the parliament, there is only 3% of elected seats for women. So is Syria safe for minority and women? I would say the clear answer is no, until there is a strong constitutional guarantee. But as Ali said, we have the constitution. Like, yeah, there is a flaw in the clear constitution that we have this year, but there is some guarantee in it for minority at least. But is it applicable on the ground? Do we have mechanism? Actually, no. Until we have anti-hate speech law, because we have seen a huge amount of hate speech against women and minorities, especially, unfortunately, from diaspora, because they don't know the situation on the ground. So they use Facebook in order to put all the anger there. And well, and there is no assured representation, as I say. So until all of these three conditions are there, Syria, it's not really safe, as the word safe identify as a human rights condition.
Thank you so much. And we are running out of time. So I think it is the time to move to the Q&A part. So just, I wanted to ask, do you have any question to our panelists? If you do, please raise your hand. I will, and maybe because the cable is not that long, so if you can come up here to ask the question and also specify to which of the speakers you direct. Yes, yes. Maybe I will actually be able to move a bit, but oh, that's also true. If it's not on the recording, then I will repeat it.
Very stable situation, very interesting. You briefly already talked about the situation of women. I know, Zozan, you have a lot of experience when it comes also to the situation of women in Syria. I'm very concerned about the representation of women. We have seen in Northeast Syria that major steps have been taken for women to politically participate. However, I'm not sure if that is in the short term that we will see nationally or in Damascus. How do you see that? Does that ask for the national government?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, the election showed the mentality of Syrians. Yani, this is a reality. That's why we are asking somehow to having some quota in Syria. In the negotiation in Northeast, between Northeast and in Damascus, this was one of the questions when one of our colleagues asked, and what about YPG, the women fighters, what they will do, so the answer was, the war is done, they can go home. Yeah, I mean, go home. Yani. Which home? I mean, these people they are part of the military. Yani. This is one of the touch that the Northeast delegations had to discuss, because when we talk about the SDF integrations, we have women units, so how this will be integrated. So they don't have the answer for that. When it comes to women representations, now Mr. Ahmed Shara is saying that he will try to put names of in the parliament and from the Syrian. He will try, yes. But I mean, in general, if we don't have somehow a quota by constitutions, we will have no representation of women anywhere. Yani, Syria in general, it's not safe for women. Being a woman in Syria, it's not easy. And being a woman working in Syria, it's not easy. And being minority woman working in like military world, it's not easy at all. So this is one of the question. We met the head of women, yani after her very famous interview about woman concept. And so my question was, if you think that woman as a physiologic should be at home serving her husband and kids, it's okay. But my question for you is why you are not doing that? What you are doing here? Why you are in this office? So she was like, La, yani, in Islam. I say, yeah, in based on Islam, what you are doing that? Why you are not at home serving your husband and your kids, you know? So it's not easy. It's not, yani, being a youth when you travel to Syria, the number of youth in Syria is really high. Yani, girls and boys, it's really high. So you don't have the infrastructure for these women, what they should do, what they can do. You go to university, many, I mean, faces are women. You go to the street, women everywhere, but you go to the municipalities or you cannot see women in the head, yani. But I think, I mean, he said he will try to do that. He will try.
Does it answer the question? Perfect. Yes.
Thanks so much. So especially thank for FMS. I have two questions. A simple one to Mr. Hamdan regarding an inclusive Syria for minorities. Does official name like Syrian Arab Republic represents all Syrians? The second question is considering the removal of Saddam Hussein from Iraq and paving the way for influence in our country, how do you see Turkish influence in Syria? Can Syrians learn from us and what happened in Iraq to Saddam Hussein? Thank you.
Yeah, so you know, I can as personally a good socialist, I can tell you that I don't believe in, you know, the importance of identity in politics, or rather, I would prefer to reduce the salience of identity in politics. But that is a personal opinion. It is not an assessment of what politics are actually like in a place like Syria. So what I would say is that based on the conversations I've had with Syrians, and based on what is very easy to see on the internet, in social media, it's clear that this question, what the country itself should be called, is super divisive, right? People have a lot really invested in it, even though this particular term has a very specific lineage dating back to the unification of Syria with Egypt, for example, right? So personally, I think that it's very logical that the country's name should be the Syrian Republic, right? But that's just like my opinion, man. Like that's not, you know, it's clearly much harder, I think, to convince a lot of Syrians of why it is important. I mean, this is some of the. This, I think, speaks to the extent to which this minority majority discourse has colonized so much of how everything is discussed in the public sphere among Syrians, especially abroad, right? That before, I think my impression, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm Lebanese American, and I always, when I would speak with Syrians, they would say, well, Syria's not like Lebanon. Lebanon's a dumpster fire. You guys all hate each other, right? We're not Ta'ifi like you guys. We don't have this this is more of this sort of pretending the problem doesn't exist, right? But what we see is that that problem that they used to pretend didn't exist is now openly shouted on the internet, right? And it manifests in even these really seemingly small but symbolically important things like the name of the country. So personally, yeah, I think it would bring people together better, but for precisely the reasons that the other two here have discussed, people are unwilling to reach out and see that it matters more that we live together than that we acknowledge that there's more of us than you, right? That's a totally different political imaginary. And then to your larger question, which I think was also aimed at me, are you Turkish by chance? Will I offend you if I give you my opinion? Right. Well, and again, maybe you guys, and you have more direct experience with this, immediate experience, but a lot of people I've talked to have said this. I saw some of this going on in the borderlands in Turkey, and a colleague of mine at the UFA, maybe you're aware, is studying this. It is very clear that Turkey, the interests of Turkey and the new Syrian government align, sort of. In the sense that they both want investment in the country. Now, the Turkish government, as far as I can tell, is really interested in turning Syria into an economic colony for access to cheap labor, access to markets for Turkish manufacturing goods, and access to other markets that you can only get by passing by land through Syria, right? So Syria, to the Turks, creates not dollar signs, but tele signs, we could say. Yeah, so I'm very concerned actually that Syria, that Ashara is at risk of being kind of pulled between the Turkish influence in the north and the Saudi and Emirati influence from the south. I guess I could talk about this more, but I should not. So that's at least the beginning of an answer to your question. Maybe the others have different feelings about this.
Does that answer your question? Okay. We are running out of time, so maybe the last question. Yes, maybe.
I have a question for stability in the recently the committee that was supposed to investigate the kidnapping of Alawite women has decided was actually kidnapped, even though a lot more were documented by villagers and other journalists. So my question is, if we look at the words of who are the members of that committee, they are HTS background. So about stability and having that, and how can we mix these two?
Well, first of all, thank you for your question. And actually, I have answered in a way when I was talking about the trial that happened in relation to Latakia. To be honest, it's the same problem. Like the national commission that has been also responsible for investigation for the violations that happened in Latakia does not mention the word that what happened there as massacre. They say violation. They don't actually focus on the role of the security general in the action that was happening. So that shows you, in a way, that unfortunately there is not transparency. Unfortunately, there is no actual rule of law that we are working according to it in any kind of investigations that's happening in Syria. And the problem there, I would say that there is a huge pressure that you have to do something in relation to minority and what's happening to minority. So the government also does not want to show themselves as someone who are making sectarian violence. It's clear that is happening. So I don't have an answer to your question, to be honest, but from the action that's happening and from the trial that happened in relation to the violation, we can say that there is no transparency, to be honest. How we can move forward, I would say the pressure. Pressure, like we as Syrians, a civil society organization, international community have to pressure for that. And there is, like, now there is a pressure. We have to all have an organized pressure in order to have an action and in order to have a result. Otherwise, we are all just, pushing in a different direction without going to any concrete result. Yeah, and that would be my answer, unfortunately. I don't have a concrete, answer. Sorry.
Yes, I'm so sorry, but we're run out of time. Maybe you could ask your questions to the panelists later, but I'm afraid we have to finish. So I wanted to thank from my heart to our amazing panelists. Can I have a round of applause as well? Thank you so much. And equally importantly, I want to thank all of you for attending, for listening, and for making this such an incredible experience. Thank you so much. And remember to follow the FMS Foundation Instagram page, the Political Science View Instagram page, and I hope to see you at future events. Thanks so much.